Moving on to topic number 10. And this is a fight. I called it, man. I called it. Go back to the show. Weeks ago, I told you that they were just jockeying to have a trilogy fight and that there would be a third fight, and that McGregor was kind of just, jockeying himself into position to get paid for this third fight. And here he's going to show up for it. I called it, man. I called it. Told you.
Yeah, you did. You absolutely did. And you're saying that McGregor rope-a-doped Poirier into this third fight. You might be right. But McGregor mentioned, the big Twitter war or social media war that's going on now, or PR war between McGregor and Poirier, is that McGregor said that he would donate $500,000 to Poirier's gym in Lafayette, Louisiana. That's for disadvantaged youth in that area, which is an awesome charity. And I guess a lot of other UFC fighters have donated to that as well in the past. So it's a very well-known charity and gym that Poirier is putting together there. So McGregor said that he would donate the money after the fight. Fight happens. Poirier still hasn't seen the money. So I don't know what's going on with McGregor. McGregor's got so much money. I'm sure he'll do it, because it's just, he's been charitable in the past. So I guess he's been helping a lot of businesses, I think in Ireland, through the pandemic, which is great to hear. As crazy as McGregor can be, to hear him do things like that is awesome. So I'm sure he'll pay the money. But they've been going back and forth about the money, and honestly, it's to drum up noise and spark up interest in this fight. This fight is scheduled for July 10th. It's definitely going to happen. But so this little Twitter war, who knows how manufactured it is? It probably is, for the most part, manufactured to drum up interest. But that makes sense. That's why guys like this, when you're a UFC fighter, you're a boxer, with these pay-per-view type of sporting events, these individual fighters, they have to not just be, great fighters. The best fighters of all time were also great promoters and self-promoters, and they would draw up interest in fights. That's why Muhammad Ali is considered one of the best of all time. We talked about Marvin Hagler a few weeks ago, and he was certainly a guy that had charisma and brought up interest in a fight. So you talk about guys not just being good fighters, being feared in the ring, but also the way that they drum up attention to their fight. So I think that's what these guys are doing right now. This makes total sense. It's funny to see how they're doing it. It's interesting that they chose it this way, but this is definitely to bring attention to that fight on July 10th. Then McGregor said something like, "Oh, if Poirier is going to talk to me like that, I'm not going to fight." And then a couple days later on social media, he says, "I'm going to put a hurting on him," or something like that. So it means like he's obviously going to fight, but he's saying stuff like that to just create controversy, which again, it's theater for these guys, and that's why they make the big bucks in this sport.
Yeah, it's funny. He definitely said, like, all right, the fight's off. I'm not fighting anymore. And then 3 days later, Dana White's like, fight's confirmed, July 10th. So it's like definitely one of those things where they are just trying to drum up more pay-per-view and more eyes on this fight. And the more to your point, I think you're right. The best fighters are also the best promoters because they really have to promote their fight. The more eyes they get on there, the more tickets that are sold, the more pay-per-view that's sold, it just benefits them. Their contracts are generally built on percentages based off all those things, whether it be box office numbers or pay-per-view numbers. So you're right. They've got to promote themselves. And obviously Conor McGregor is really one of the best promoters of himself. We've obviously talked about that in the past. And I'm going to toot my own horn again and say, I called this. I knew that they were going to do this, and I knew they were setting it up for a trilogy fight. And I honestly called a few shows ago also that McGregor's going to beat him this time. I said McGregor's going to beat him. I think McGregor is going to figure it out. And even McGregor told him on Twitter, he said, you can bring those little kicks again. I've got everything to defend those little kicks and box those little kicks. But we're going to stand in the middle of the ring and go toe-to-toe, and that's kind of where I'll be. Poirier responded saying he's going to be in the middle of the ring, but I still think Poirier is going to be trying to throw those check kicks to be able to get McGregor down. That's really what helped him in the first fight. But I think it's really one of those things. Yeah, producer Ben's showing that clip. Go back and watch it, guys. Go back and watch it, viewers. I called it. I called this fight. I called the trilogy fight, and like I said, I called McGregor that he's going to win it. And guess what? It's back in Big Fight City, right? It's back in Las Vegas, where all the lights are and where all the big money fights are in the world. We all know that. So I would love to get some tickets for this fight July 10th in Vegas, but I'd also be happy to watch it at home too. And I might have to do that because I'm really looking forward to seeing if McGregor can put his money where his mouth is. And to be honest, another thing where I was convinced that that Twitter feud was kind of set up because McGregor called him a hillbilly. He called him a hillbilly like 3 or 4 times. And I was like, man, McGregor is really playing it up. So like people can get like interested in this fight even more. But honestly, I think just it being a trilogy fight is enough to really drum up to see who can get the best in this series of 3 fights. But like I said, I'm calling it. I'm calling McGregor. I'm not saying it's going to be a knockout. I'll have to think about that going forward and getting closer to fight night on that call. But I'm definitely predicting a Conor McGregor win.
Nice. Yeah. No, this is going to be great. I'm hoping too that, you know, with the pandemic going on, that there's a certain amount of fans that can be allowed in the arena. I would think by July, you know, hopefully they can, even if they can just get like 50% capacity or something like that, which I think is definitely achievable by the time this fight rolls around. That would be great. I'm even wondering if they could do something in Vegas outside, you know, and have the fight outside at a big outdoor space in Vegas. That would be cool too. And then you wouldn't have to worry as much about the pandemic, especially at that point. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, this is going to be great. And again, these guys are doing a great job promoting this. And, you know, this is how you use social media if you're an athlete, to promote things like this. So very cool between those 2 guys.
Quickly, I mean, to your point, the MGM has a huge outdoor venue that they've used for boxing in the past.
Right.
So yeah, that's your point. That could be a great option. I'm not sure what venue it's at and if they've signed that yet, but yeah, that's a great point, Pat.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool to have it outside, you know. And you know, you always worry about the weather, but the weather in Vegas is always dry, so I think it'd work out well. I don't know how the fighters like working, you know, fighting outside in Vegas. It could be, you know, July, it's going to be super hot. So the fight would be at nighttime, but it's still going to be super hot. So that might be an issue. But, you know, they can figure something out. It's Vegas. They have a lot of different venues. They have a lot of different ways to do things. So
cage fighting.
Drop something out. Exactly. Folks, that's going to do it for our show this week. Again, we went over a lot of different stuff. The Masters, UFC, and of course, our boy Julian Edelman retiring. Thank you, Julian, for your career here in New England. We're going to miss you. But again, if you want to follow us on social media, our links are at the bottom of the screen. Those are our Twitter handles. And again, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Comeback Sports. A lot of good stuff up there. Our producer, Ben Kudo, is doing a great job cutting up different segments and posting them on our page. And also make sure you like us and jump in the chat. Ask us questions. If you want to hear a question, over during one of our shows, we'll make sure to drop your name in. If you don't want your name mentioned, but you still want to drop a question, do it anonymously. We don't have to say your name, so just let us know. Throw something in there. You can tweet at Brandon and I, and you know, get involved, because we want this to be an open conversation here on Comeback Sports. There's still a lot going on here in April. You folks who know us already know that Brandon and I are psyched about the NFL draft coming up in 2 weeks. We're going to have a lot to talk about over the next couple of weeks with that. But as always, there's always other stuff going on in sports as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun over the next few weeks here in April. But we're going to pack it up for now, folks. But we'll see you next time here on Comeback Sports. Have a good night, everybody.